we watched the making of The Shining, I think 3 times in a row, because we could not believe there was Stanley Kubrick. And the first time you see him, he starts talking like this, and he's like, "All right, Shelley, what we have to do here is we have to get you over to the." There's one point where he's like, "I think they should play in a wide shot, considering the situation."
Bill Hader knew he wanted to be a filmmaker at a very young age. He was obsessed with movies and with directors like Steven Spielberg, John Landis, and Stanley Kubrick. Before Bill started directing, he became famous for his work in front of the camera. He was a cast member on Saturday Night Live from 2005 to 2013. He stood out quickly, known for his many impressions, including Dateline's Keith Morrison and the actor Alan Alda.
Alan Alda?
Son, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. That is a terrific line. I feel like I understand everything about this movie just from the one line. That's good writing, you know?
Bill Hader has also been funny as an actor in movies, playing the impressionable cop in Superbad, Amy Schumer's love interest in Judd Apatow's Trainwreck, and the voice of fear in Pixar's Inside Out. But the role that has consumed Bill for almost a decade is a hitman who wants to be an actor in the HBO show Barry. Bill not only plays Barry, he co-created the show with Alec Berg. He's also one of the main writers, and he directed more than half the episodes, including the entire final season. Look, I love talking movies with Bill Hader, which makes this final episode in our season so special. And don't worry, a second season is on the way. Bill is incredibly observant, and what he notices about movies is always interesting and often unique. Lastly, he's just so funny in a really generous way. And laughing while talking about movies, it doesn't get much better than that. I'm your host, Ben Mankiewicz. This is Talking Pictures, a podcast about movies, about memories, and all the stuff that happens in between. Turner Classic Movies makes this podcast with the streaming service Max, where you can see some of the movies mentioned in this episode, and of course, it's where you can find Barry. I talked with Bill Hader back in February, and we jumped right into his lifelong love of movies. Bill Hader, it's nice to see you again.
Hey, good to see you, man.
As I read into you, and I thought I knew a lot about you, but like you wanted to be a filmmaker from the start, even if you didn't ever know to, as a kid anyway, to vocalize that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, completely. I was a huge movie fan, but knew very early, became very much focused on directors, not really actors. I was very taken with directors.
You were, as a kid, really into Stanley Kubrick, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was the first Kubrick movie you saw?
The Shining on TBS. So it was The Shining, but edited for television.
Right. The Shining gets better when you stop every 8 or 9 minutes for a Calgon ad, I think.
Yeah. It doesn't take the air out of it at all.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But yeah, and I just noticed immediately you could be flipping through the channels and you would land on a Kubrick movie for 2 seconds. You would know it's a Kubrick movie. The quality of it, the way it's shot, the blown out, especially if it's color, the blown out windows, the framing. And then watching 2001, Dr. Strangelove, which I'll admit the first time I saw it was totally over my head. I thought it was really funny, but my dad was laughing really hard and I didn't fully get it. Now it's one of my favorite movies. And then the big one, which, my dad doesn't love it when I mention this in interviews, but he did let me watch Clockwork Orange. He did make me leave the room a couple of times and then come back. But he had the soundtrack to Clockwork Orange. My dad did. And so I would hear the soundtrack in his car sometimes, and I would be like, what the hell is this? That music is so Wendy Carlos's music is unbelievable, and then all the classical pieces in it. And so I was really obsessed with seeing that. I remember being very obsessed with seeing that film, and then he let me watch it, but I remember having to get up and leave maybe like 5 times.
And so you would have been what? I mean, that's in the 80s sometimes.
Yeah, so it was I know the exact date. It was the night of the first. It was the night of the Cubs' first night game. My dad was a Cubs fan, so that's 8/8/88. That's August 8th, 1988. So I was 10.
You were 10, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was 10 years old, and he said, "All right, leave. Okay, you come back in." And then you go, "Oh, wait, no, go back, go back." But you watch Clockwork Orange when you're 10, and it either makes you, scared of movies, or a lunatic, or a filmmaker. It's like one of the three.
Yeah, so, right, your dad gambled. It turns out it paid off.
Yeah, it paid off, but because I got the right thing out of it. I was so caught up in the story and the way it was made and how weird the performances were. You see that, and then you go and play Little League, and the kids are talking about The Natural. It's like, yeah, man, I can't relate to this anymore. It's like,
become a little league film snob. That's great.
No, big time. Yeah. It's like, and what I realized, what I was reacting to in all these was a vision. They had just a very clear vision of what they wanted.
So you'd had this obsession with this guy. Obsession might be too strong. You were fascinated by this director, and you were really interested, but you had no idea what he looked like. And then you saw the making of The Shining, and you were like, I'm going to learn what Stanley, like you had knots in your stomach in excitement of what Stanley Kubrick was going to look like.
That's true. Yeah. My friends and we had just moved to LA. I was 20 or 21, and Kubrick had died, and they came out with that DVD set with the making of The Shining, which you could not find anywhere. And we all sat around a TV at my friend Nick Jasinovich's house, and Justin Carlton, these two guys that I was buddies with, who have since to have very good careers. And we're sitting at their small apartment in Burbank, and we watched the making of The Shining, I think 3 times in a row, because we could not believe there was Stanley Kubrick. And the first time you see him, his daughter Vivian made the documentary, and you're just following Jack Nicholson through the Overlook set. And then it arrives at this big burly guy in a coat who's balding with the big glasses and a giant beard. And that's Kubrick. And up until that moment, I thought he was British.
Oh, that's
so when he starts talking like this, and he's like, "All right, Shelley, what we have to do here is we have to get you over to the there's one point where he's like, I think they should play in a wide shot considering the situation.
It might be better to just play it as a medium shot with the situation."
Well, that's not bad. Let's do that.
And I was like, wow, this is crazy. He's from the Bronx. I went, oh my God, he's just like a guy from the Bronx who makes these, really insane experiences. 2001, that is a crazy experience watching that film. I've seen it now a couple of times in the theater. And to have that, it came out, it lost to Oliver, I think, the musical, and Planet of the Apes was that year. And it's just like a movie from another, I'm kind of speechless. I can't imagine what it was like for people in 1968 to see that movie.
Right. It's why it befuddled so many people, right? I mean,
people didn't know what
to make of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Kubrick's wife said the Blue Rinse Brigade didn't like the movie. But I was just like completely floored by it even now. I go, you still haven't seen anything like that. And then you see him, and he's this guy from the Bronx.
Such a great Kubrick impression, by the way. That was really
good. Well,
he
was just very kind of impatient, especially with Shelley Duvall in that documentary.
you know, my favorite Kubrick movie is it's arguably my favorite movie of all time is Paths of Glory. And
Yeah, amazing.
Every time I see Paths of Glory, and I've seen it easily 8 times, and every time I feel like I was an amazing 2-hour and 48-minute movie that just sort of, and then you look and it's been 88 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that movie just starts, bang.
Yeah, it starts, bang, you're in it. And George McCready was like one of my favorite actors of that time.
Yeah, I love George.
Man never left the trenches. I just think he's so funny. He's so good in that movie.
He is funny. It's not meant to, I mean, I don't know if it's meant to be funny.
Right. But that's what Kubrick does is he gets these performances from people that are very big sometimes where like Sterling Hayden. Right. That's obviously meant to be funny, but it's still big. Yeah. Yeah. Or I read that George C. Scott did not get in Dr. Strangelove why he was making him do all this.
That's a better example. Yeah.
Remember when he falls at one point in the war room and he goes, "They're going to clobber us."
It's an obvious comic trick, Mr. President. We're wasting valuable time. Look at the big boy. They're getting ready to clobber us.
It's like Looney Tunes, the way how big he plays things, but you could just tell Kubrick is just running on his instincts, and he's like, I remember there's that story, I think Steven Spielberg asked Kubrick, have you heard this? Like, that he didn't, Kubrick asked Steven Spielberg, did you like The Shining? And at the time, Spielberg said, not really, and he said, why? And he's like, I just thought Jack Nicholson was really big. And Kubrick said, okay, name your 5 favorite actors. And Steven Spielberg, I think, said like Jimmy Stewart, Spencer Tracy, Henry Fonda, Clark Gable, and I don't know.
Frederick March, whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Somebody, Robert Montgomery or something.
Right.
And he went, okay, stop. In that list, you did not mention James Cagney. James Cagney is my all-time favorite actor, and that's why Jack Nicholson is great in The Shining.
That's a great story.
I thought that was a great story that he shared because you go, oh, he likes that. He wants someone who pops.
So I was going to start with this, but I didn't want to start because it's the same way I think the Grantland piece started. I think it was Grantland. Maybe it was The Ringer. But about walking out on the SATs.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I feel like that's that if you want to understand some of what moves Bill Hader through life, and that 16-year-old walking out on the SATs, I like that story. That's a good story.
Well, yeah, because I wouldn't have. I mean, if there's, I don't even know if SATs are even a thing anymore. But if if anybody's thinking about walking out of them, I wouldn't. But I this was not. I mean, my mother cried when she found out I did this, but I think teachers at my school, they saw that I wasn't like doing drugs and drinking or partying or anything like that. They could tell I just had a very clear, narrow obsession with movies and books, and that I would work really hard on something I was interested in. But if I wasn't interested in it, I couldn't even bring myself to think about it. And yeah, I went to the SATs. I hadn't studied for it. The other thing, I don't know if I've told this, but I remember the morning of the SATs, I went and had breakfast with some friends, and they were all talking about these expensive tutors they had gotten that helped them break the SAT. And there's these books you can get that can help you prepare for it and all this. And I went, oh, I thought you just kind of showed up.
Right. Yeah.
So I went in and I just saw all these people dutifully working. And then I opened up my book and I looked at it and just was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I just put my name on it and turned it in and walked out. And then I went and saw Mars Attacks.
I didn't know there was a movie component to the story.
Yeah. I went and saw Mars Attacks. And then during Mars Attacks, which is, this movie about an alien invasion and the end of the world, I'm just sitting there going, I've just blown up my life.
Right.
I was like watching that movie, not laughing, but going, I think I might have just blown up my life. I don't know. And then,
but there's a lot of courage in that. At a young age, you seem to have an idea of who you were.
Yeah, I think it was like, if this doesn't work, I really don't know what's gonna happen. But I think the reason I felt confident in that was I just went, well, I just have, um, it's very well documented that I'm a very anxious. I can be very anxious, and that's a thing I'm always struggling with. But I think, it's that thing of you struggle with those things, but then, you know, I knew that I could make a movie. I knew I could be a filmmaker. It's one of those things where, some people, kids, they hear music and they sit at a piano and they go, "Oh, I know how to do that," or know how to draw. I cannot draw to save my life. But I would watch movies, and the big aha one for me really was at the age of 15, staying up late and on USA Up All Night, seeing The Evil Dead,
Yeah.
Sam Raimi movie, because it was shot, on small 16 millimeter cameras, like an Arri BL and, Arri S, I think. And it was a bunch of 20-year-olds making a movie. And I could see, it was kind of like punk rock, it was like, I could see how they could do that, how they did it. And I went, oh, I think I could do that, get those camera angles and make something like that. I felt very confident.
Is that right around when you started making like little short films?
Yeah, little short videos with my sisters. Yeah, I would make them, and they were all, and of course, they were all kind of Evil Dead spoofs. It was them running and me chasing them with a camera, and making our own fake blood and stuff.
Is that so you eventually you don't go to college, but you spend a little bit of time at, what was it, Scottsdale Community College?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Jimmy Kimmel likes to point out I'm the only person who knows who went out of state for community college.
That is it's a great line. Yeah.
Which is true. I went out of state for community college. Because I initially went to the Art Institute of Phoenix, and that's kind of like a trade school. And then while I was there, this guy who lived in Scottsdale went, Scottsdale Community College, they have film. And this is 1997. So video wasn't what it is now. And so I went, well, I want to shoot on film. And they had, 4 avids. And I went, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I applied there and made some short films, and immediately lost all my confidence because the films I made, no one liked. I had a ton of confidence leaving Tulsa, and then I kind of lost it in Arizona, and then kind of came to LA a little bit more humbled, and hey, let me try to make this work.
But you applied to film school.
I did. I applied to USC, which is so funny. I was like, are you out of your mind? I think I applied to NYU, and then I applied to Cal Arts, and I got turned down by everybody.
Yeah, but they turned you down with flair.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, Cal Arts called me. I remember standing by the phone all day because they were going to call you, and I made some short films, some on film, and they said, we like your work, but it seems very mainstream.
Right, but they thought it was, but didn't they think it was also, they were like, it was very entertaining. It was almost too entertaining.
It was too entertaining. That's right. It's entertaining. It's almost too entertaining. And then I think I said to them, I'm like, but aren't you where like all the Disney animators train as Cal Arts?
This is what we want to do? Isn't
that what you want to do? And it's like, yeah, but our film department,
Right.
This is like, it had a story and it was kind of exciting, and we don't want that. So, I didn't, but the real turning point for me really was getting Saturday Night Live. And well, before that, at one point when I was auditioning to get into the Level 5 show at Second City, LA, we all did this audition, and then afterwards, Dave Rosowski, who ran it, would call each of us over and tell us whether we got in or not. And he would give you notes on things you needed to work on. And I went over, kind of nervous, expecting, okay, let's see, and did I make it in or not? And he just said, "You're really good at this." And I went, "Oh, thanks." He went, "Yeah, you're in. I got nothing else to say. You're really good at this." And I was walking on air for 2 months because I had not heard that,
Yeah.
in years. It was just, I needed some confidence. I needed someone to go, "Hey, man, you're doing good." But again, I had to put myself out there to get that. And it was a lot of putting myself out, and it, in Arizona, especially, and it not working,
We're going to take a quick break. Coming up, Bill Hader tells us how the writer's room on Barry pushed him to get out of his comfort zone.
Bill, if you're going to go up to the bell, ring it.
Bill Hader reveres Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, the visionary behind the films Rashomon, Seven Samurai, and Ikiru. Back in 2010, Bill was on TCM talking to host Robert Osborne about Kurosawa. In that interview, Bill said that Rashomon is about getting at the fundamental truth of something. Honesty and truth in a screenplay is something Bill has brought up several times in different interviews. I was curious what he meant, so I asked him about it. By the way, we talk about Bill's show Barry, and there are a few spoilers ahead. At some point in an interview, you talked about what makes a screenplay honest. That it all has to start with a screenplay, and you talked about Kurosawa, and a great director can't make a bad screenplay great. He might be able to make it okay or better, right? But if you're going to make a great movie, you got to have a great screenplay. And so what makes a screenplay honest?
I'm dealing with this constantly, I'm writing something now, and I'm learning that it's basically a balance between logic and emotion and emotional honesty. I'm friends with this George Saunders, an amazing writer, and he talks about this. And he has a book called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, where he breaks down these Russian short stories. and it's all stuff that, when I was working on Barry, we would do in the writer's room. It's like, you always have to be escalating, meaning each scene has to kind of build up to the next, and it's getting, more exciting. Or as I think Billy Wilder said it, you always want to just tighten the noose around the audience's neck and just keep tightening it and tighten it as the movie keeps moving, and then this thing of causality, when I worked at South Park, I learned this, which was, you don't say something as this happens and then this happens and then this happens. You say this happens, so therefore this happens, so therefore this happens, but then this happens, so now this happens. And
well, I like that. I like that term. I like that idea of causality, and that you're always sort of checking yourself on a story, a screenplay. Is this right? Is this honest? Is this true?
Everything has to kind of build off the next thing. We would try to do that on Barry, and you would have things where, you would have a scene and go, well, why is this in here? And I learned it. The best thing, when you edit a thing, that's the best thing you can do if you write a screenplay, is give it to an editor. My friends who are editors,
right?
I always give my scripts to editors to give notes, because they have set, just from the work that they do, they have to craft a story. They just understand, the good ones understand what makes a story work. And they will always tell me, that's an interesting thing. You don't need it, because you're already kind of saying that in this scene.
That's
or it's like, I know why you're putting this in here to give it kind of a mood, but I feel like you're kind of getting that here, and I just had an experience recently where I had this a thing I'm working on, where I had the two editors all said, I don't think the movie really starts until this scene on page 25. And I realized, oh yeah, everything up until then is kind of backstory, and that's like, I think you want to start right here, and it's like, oh yeah, you're right, and that's the best.
So Barry is one of those shows for me, and I've unlike you, I've watched a lot of television. Well, again, this is these last 20 years have been this, 25 years since The Sopranos, this amazing run of television.
Oh yeah.
And there's shows I love, and there's shows I can't wait till the next episode comes, the next season comes. Barry is one of the very few shows that from the first season, from the first episode, that fills my head, that I find myself thinking about days later, weeks later, now months later. But this was an amazing 4-year run. So congratulations, 4 seasons.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
I heard you say that, I want to ask you about one episode in particular, but I heard you say that shortly after you were done, there was a sense of relief. I'm sure there was some loss. Endings are hard, but you'd spent, like you said, like 80 to 90% of your energy over like 9 years on Barry. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of room for anything else. And that was hard, Yeah,
because you did. So a couple of things struck out. First of all, the first episode of the 3rd season, I think we can spoil it. That I'm correct. That's where Barry, that's where they're out in the fields, right? And like the digging of the grave.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And Barry, who's an assassin, ends up killing both of these guys. 2 guys who really didn't deserve to die. And that like hit me in the face, because it made me, even though he's a hitman, furious, not at the show, but at Barry.
Yeah.
Right. Like I felt betrayed by Barry. Right. Yeah. And then as soon as I felt that, I was like, oh, I like this show. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is like part of and then he wins me back eventually. Well, I doesn't win me back, but I forgave him to the extent that.
Yeah. Well, that was the idea with that 3rd season, was that the first and second season was all about, can I stop killing and be a good person? And then, it was at the end of season 2, there's this massacre that happens when he's trying to find Stephen Root's character. And then, we just were like, let's just start off the season with him killing these two idiots.
Right. And, these 2 affable idiots, right?
Affable morons. Yeah.
Right, affable
arguing.
Yeah.
And the one guy forgave the other guy and was like, let's just call it off. And it's like, I can't do that, and he apologized. And what made him mad, what was funny about that scene, is that it's what Barry can't do in his life, is this idea of these 2 guys, they could apologize. So the idea was literally killing the idea of redemption. and that's just like, that's just not in the cards for me. So, right. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And yeah,
I remember I was walking around, I got up after the episode, I was walking behind the couch, I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what he is doing. He being you, right? Yeah. Barry being you, and Barry being Bill Hader. Barry being Barry, and Barry being Bill Hader. And I was like, what is he doing? There's something happening here. What is this? And I was like, I am super invested in this show, man. This is
people. It's nice keeping people on their toes, but I mean, it is a thing where we're just in the writers' room, also just trying to make it interesting for ourselves. And again, it's that honest thing where you go, well, what would they do right here? And sometimes you do a thing that's kind of halfway through what they would do. You don't want to make them that bad.
No, but I got it. I know why he killed him. I know why he did it. Yeah. But
then, then you eventually go, well, I think he should probably kill the guys.
Right,
season 1, when he kills his friend Chris, we were sitting there, he's in the car with his friend. The guy knows too much, and Barry knows that he knows too much. And he's like, look, I got a wife and a kid. I didn't want to see this shit. Like, we're friends and everything.
I know you're not gonna do anything crazy, Barry. I know you're a good guy. So I'm gonna drop you off. And then I'm gonna keep my fat trap shut. And then You know, I promise you, no one will ever know any. Wait.
And I remember writing that scene, and there was a part of me that's like, well, maybe does he let him go, and then this comes back, you know? And Liz Sarnoff, one of our writers, said, and I'll never forget this. She went, "Bill, if you're gonna go up to the bell, ring it."
Right. Yeah.
Like, kill him. He's got to kill him. Come on. Like, you know, let's do it. Let's go. You know, no, all right. You're right. You know,
It's it must have been nice to collaborate with people in that way. It must
yeah,
have
you
been
need
really...
those people who you have to constantly be learning. Again, I'm like, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a massive Kurosawa fan. And I remember, I think it was when he won some honorary Oscar or whatever, his speech had something to the effect of, you know, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. You know, I'm still trying to figure out how these movies
He was like
work.
in his 70s at that point.
Yeah, and he had made some of the greatest films ever made, and it was like, I still don't. You got to be curious about. Oh, that's interesting. That worked. That didn't. You know, having the you know, George Saunders again talks. He's this way where he really does approach things like a student. You know, he and I had dinner or lunch after Christmas, and we both had watched It's a Wonderful Life, and I'd watched it with my kids, and we were like, why is that ending so effective? You know, it's like, God, my 14-year-old was bawling, and we discussed it, and we were like, maybe it's because George Bailey, the nice things he does for everybody, you know, it's kind of like you know, it's out of it has like a negative. He wants to get out of that place, you know, and he keeps pulling him back. So when he's doing nice things for people, he kind of doesn't want to be doing it. So it gives the audience a feeling of like, he's doing good things, but man, do we want to see him get out of that place? Or, you know, we're kind of with him, kind of frustrated, like, oh, he's stuck there. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of is like, you're looking at this thing with the left hand while the right hand is doing this other thing, which is, you're showing all the nice things he's doing. So when they all repay him at the end, you know, Capra takes him, obviously everybody knows, to the point of suicide. When you see what these people do, it's that thing where it's surprising, but it's inevitable. You know, you didn't realize they were planting all that, you know? And so it's a really well done movie.
It's hard.
It's so hard to do that, where you go, that's surprising but inevitable. That's like the key. But I mean, to do that, you know, I another great movie with an ending like that for me is the original Bad News Bears. Right. That ending, where you know, it's one of the great endings in movies to me.
It is
Bad News Bears, because you just go. I get emotional when I watch that, when he's like, everybody's going to play, and then they start winning, and you're like, oh my God, and then it doesn't happen. But then they did, you know, because then when he throws the trophy at the kid's head and goes, fuck you, we're going to beat you next year. And it's like, they start pouring beers in their heads. I'm like, the emotional roller coaster I go on in the last 10 minutes of that movie is, it always gets me.
But endings like the Bad News Bears, like It's a Wonderful Life, like Shawshank Redemption. To me, which deliver what could, in lesser hands, or if it didn't work, be just super schmaltzy, right?
Yeah,
and then aren't.
If you watch It's a Wonderful Life, it's a dark movie.
It is a very dark movie.
Dark movie. Yeah, I mean, when the pharmacist hits him at the beginning and then says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I mean, it's really, really rough at times, and Jimmy Stewart goes incredibly unhinged in that movie. I mean, it's so the ending is just this huge release, you know.
I feel like this is a spot where I should mention this you call a wonderful life. So I'm going to jump in here and explain. Bill Hader once did an impression of me on SNL, though it was more of a characterization, really. The skit had Bill, as me, hosting TCM and introducing a Hanukkah version of It's a Wonderful Life.
You're watching Turner Classic Movies. Welcome back to Turner Classic Movies. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Tonight we look at 1946's It's a Wonderful Life. This classic film tells the story of George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, who receives a lesson in optimism from his fellow man at Christmas time. But it wasn't always that way. The film was originally made as a Hanukkah movie, titled This You Call a Wonderful Life? No footage of the Hanukkah version has ever been seen, until now.
Funny thing is, Bill does a fantastic impersonation of my brother Josh Mankiewicz. Josh is a correspondent on Dateline, which Bill watches a lot. My brother taught me everything I know about being on TV, and he has a very particular way of talking. You are definitely the only person to impersonate both me, although
that's right,
me and my brother, Josh Mankiewicz.
That's true. That is true.
From Dateline. Now, the impersation of me,
it's pretty not an impersonation of you,
right? It was just
it's like name only.
It was by name only, and just to get into an old movie joke, and it was a great one, which was the Jewish version of "It's a Wonderful Life."
This you call a wonderful life.
This you call a wonderful life.
You know, that was the same. That was the same episode as that's the Jeff Bridges episode. That was.
Oh, is that
so
right?
When I went back to play you, I was still like, going, what the hell's going on? Because I had a panic attack.
That was this Julian Assange episode. Really?
Yeah, so that's the same episode where I had, because I remember after that, they said you only have one other thing. You're playing Ben Mankiewicz and something. And I was like, okay, and then you can
go home.
Real
quick though, but in that moment, there's a nice thing that I think I read this, but that Lorne Michaels said to you, like in an effort to, he was like, hey, look, man, you can work here as long as you want.
Yeah. That was early. That wasn't in regards to the panic attacks. That was, I remember it was when Seth Rogen hosted, and I was incredibly anxious and all week. And he just pulled me aside and said, you can work here as long as you want. Like, basically like, hey man, you got the job.
Right.
We'll try to relax and have fun,
It's a very kind thing to do.
Yeah, it was nice, but I didn't fully relax.
Well, I mean, anxiety. There isn't.
But yeah, but it was nice of him to give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, it's an illness. It's a condition anyway that needs to be dealt with. There isn't one magical sentence. Which
you manage it. You
manage it, right?
Yeah, you manage it. Yeah.
But so and then of course you did my brother on Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Because you do Keith Morrison from Dateline very effectively, and Keith's got this great voice.
Yeah. Oh, no, really? Oh, okay. Your brother shot you in the face. Must have been a while.
Yeah. And then Kimmel asked you to do somebody obscure, and the thing you do is you go, this is another guy, Dateline, Josh Mankiewicz.
Josh Mankiewicz is the best because he kind of has a stuffy nose. He's always in Aruba. It's like the guy killed someone in Cabo San Lucas. That's mine. Like he always gets the best. And then he goes. He always says you could have a drinking game with this. Every time he'll do this. He goes, so you found a dead. Now most people when they find a dead body in their house, they call 911. But you didn't do that, did you?
Oh yeah, and your brother is always on he always is in like Aruba. Like if there's a murder in an awesome locale, somehow your brother is always there in a Hawaiian shirt with like a sunburned face, having to talk really loud over the roar of surf behind him, where like Dennis Murphy will be in like a basement in Cleveland. The bodies were found here, but your brother is like with a daiquiri. but yeah, and he goes, his thing in you could do a drinking game with it where he goes, most people would call 911. You didn't do that, did you?
So you have caused since that moment I won't exaggerate, he's heard it now 785 times, and we do it and we do it when he's even not around. Well, most people wouldn't have played the tight end who was on injured reserve in the biggest fantasy football game of the year, but You didn't do that, did you? I mean, there's no context, which we don't think it's funny.
Yeah, most people would have brought French fries with my cheeseburger.
Right. You didn't do that.
You didn't do that, did you?
We're taking another quick break. When we return, we'll have our Super 8, where Bill Hader reveals he was a movie snob in high school. And we're back. Time for our Super 8, where we ask our guests a series of set questions about movies they've watched, movies they've loved, and movies they'll never forget. I want to take you through these Super 8 questions. What's your most memorable movie watching experience, Bill?
Oh man, there's so many. Watching Charles Laughton, Hunchback of Notre Dame when I was a kid, and I was watching it with my parents, and I was laying on the floor, and the moment when Charles Laughton as Quasimodo swings down and saves Maureen O'Hara, I remember my mom going, like she caught her breath when that happened.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember that being really memorable and going, oh man, this is like a drug. This is so nice. I love this. You know, it was kind of a moment where I was like, oh yeah, these things are really powerful.
Movie you loved in high school?
Man, in high school, I was such a movie snob, but if I had to pick one movie I loved in high school, it'd probably be Barton Fink. Yeah, that movie had a very big effect on me. Even though I saw it when I was in middle school, it was a movie that, it was a movie that I would show friends, and I would say 90% of them didn't get it and were like, that was weird. But I had the confidence of kind of going, no, there's so much more going on in this thing, than what's happening, and the kind of bravery of the filmmakers to kind of just trust their instincts.
And you love the Coen brothers, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's embarrassing. Yeah. I had dinner with a director not too long ago, and they said, well, it's clear that you like the Coen brothers. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, but I'm right there with you. It's just too, they can't help but make it interesting. I think that's
and they've been very, for the most part, they're incredibly consistent too.
Totally.
I mean, it's for people that lay in their career to be making, that it came out. This is probably now 10 years ago, but when A Serious Man and Inside Llewyn Davis, both those came out, I was like, these are two of their best movies. These are like masterpieces,
Yeah, and I like some of the ones that critics liked less. I mean, I liked what was the Clooney one where he's
Intolerable Cruelty?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, yes, but the more recent one with the Roman uniform where he's the.
Hail Caesar.
Yeah, I liked Hail Caesar, and I loved the one with him and Brad Pitt.
I like Burn After Reading a lot.
I like Burn After Reading.
Simmons is so funny in that movie.
Yeah, right. There's just so much funny in there. Yeah,
the actual CIA guys trying to piece together what's happening is one of the funniest things.
It's exceptional.
I like crying laughing during that, where they're just going, well, what the hell even happened? Like, they have no idea what's going on.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to do it again.
Yes, sir.
I'm fucked if I know what we did.
Yes, sir. It's hard to say.
It's so good. I mean, I just whatever. Brad Pitt's death, one of the great shocking movie deaths. Right.
But that's the thing about their movies is people would see that and go, I don't know. It's just kind of what, and I'm like, oh, but it's about middle-aged people kind of trying to make their lives exciting.
Right. Make their lives more interesting. Right.
Yeah. Make their lives more interesting. And they're just kind of hopeless. But to do it like a spy thriller is really funny.
So is there a movie you'd show a date?
I don't know. You know what? This is like really dorky. But if I walked past that theater and I saw Trouble in Paradise playing, I would want to go see that. I think that movie is so fun.
It's pretty perfect. And Ernst
It's like kind of a perfect movie. I think that would be a great one.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with
Oh, and
movies.
you know, and honestly, too, it just because it's the apartment. I think the apartment's a great movie.
The
I like
Apartment is a great movie. That's why your programming for TCM was so interesting because you picked a Billy Wilder movie when you picked a night to
Five
program
Graves
on
of
TCM.
Cairo, which is
You did right. You did Five Graves to Cairo, which is
yeah,
not.
which I love that film. I think that's one of my favorite
That's the
movies.
year before he made Double Indemnity.
Yeah, that movie is just fantastic. Sunset Boulevard too. I just recently rewatched that, and that really holds up. I mean, any of those kind of Lubitsch, Wilder, Preston Sturgis, anything like that. I kind of, it doesn't really matter what it is. I want to go check it out.
A movie that makes you cry without fail.
Oh, that's easy. The movie Kess, the Ken Loach film. There's a scene in the movie Kess where the main character, this boy who's training a kestrel, he a bird. He's kind of shy and doesn't really speak up in class. And there's a moment where the teacher makes him stand up and explain how he trains the kestrel, and the class suddenly becomes very interested in him, and they're asking him questions. And it's kind of a transcendent moment in a movie where these are all non-actors. I think the teacher's an actor, but all the kids aren't, and it feels so genuine and so intimate and real. And seeing this kid in a very real way kind of open up, I find incredibly moving.
Yeah, well, I'll just be honest. So that's one of the, I came at TCM and the biggest hole that I had were definitely foreign films, including English films. Well, obviously those are also foreign, but I mean, they're not foreign language films. And I hadn't seen Kess, and we've introduced it, but I still haven't seen it. And so that's going to be the first thing I do.
It's a great film. You might need subtitles because the accents are so.
Dude, I watched Barry with subtitles. Okay,
Yeah.
So that ship sailed long ago, my friend.
So, but it's such a. I find that to be a really powerful film. And then I remember being moved as a kid by like a lot of people to Kill a Mockingbird when you first see Boo Radley and pushes in on the girl and she goes, "Hi, Boo," and you realize like, oh, the boogeyman is just as scared of you. I thought that was really sweet, and I remember being emotional about that.
I cry every time in To Kill a Mockingbird when the Reverend says to stand up, Scout, your father's passing.
Yeah, stand up, Scout. That is also that. Yes, that scene too is your father. That's a big.
I mean, if you had even, I imagine even if you had a terrible relationship with your father, that might make you cry.
But you saw this guy. One of my favorite shots in that entire movie is when Brock Peters says, "I felt sorry for her," and it cuts to Gregory Peck and the look on his face. He knows right then, like, oh, I just lost.
Filmmaker or even an actor or an actress from the past who you'd like to make a movie with if that opportunity were available?
Oh man, the people I really admire, I don't know if I would ever want to work with as an actor because it seems like their actors went through hell. Yeah. I don't know if I could do the 100 takes on a Kubrick movie. I think I would.
Right, or William Wyler. Let me ask you this:
Wyler doing a billion takes, and making.
But so then there's Frank Sinatra, and I was curious because Sinatra had some definite presence on screen, and he's good, obviously, and From Here to Eternity, he's good in a bunch of things. I love Von Ryan's Express, and but he, he's famous that he would just do one take. And I always, because I'm insecure that like in the few times that I've had to act, and I always just play a reporter, but even if they give me the same line, like I don't, I'm positive that my first reading and my 13th reading will be identical. Right. Yeah. And so I always figured that's what Sinatra was afraid of. It wasn't that he was so busy and he made it up as I want the first one to be natural, but I feel like he was probably afraid.
Yeah. It's like he's the Clint Eastwood thing where they would just do one or two takes and he'd be like, great, that was great, moving on. Yeah. That's kind of scary too. But
were you a good director of actors? Or are you a good director of actors?
I don't know. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think because I am an actor, I can kind of feel their, insecurity and I end up doing things that directors do that drive me crazy. I do to actors where I over explain something.
Yeah.
The worst thing you could do is be kind of working it out loud in front of an actor because they get very confused. And I've done that a couple of times or I've given terrible direction of like, yeah, it's a thing where you're scared, but you're also kind of happy. And they're like, what? And I'm like, you know what? Let me go think about this for a second. Let me see the script.
Have you gotten pushback? Like,
oh, yeah. And again, pretty much rightfully so. If I gave a direction that made zero sense. But if the thing is, if you've written the thing, that's kind of your job as a director. A lot of it's is done because, it's the same as casting because you've written it, you understand the emotions and where everything's at. But then if an actor has an idea that kind of counters that, you kind of know whether what they're wanting to do or their questions or wherever it's leading, whether it still works for the whole of the story, but also actors just don't want to look like an idiot, they just don't want to look stupid. So they really don't want to look stupid. So, and I relate to that. So they just, the more you can make actors feel comfortable and be a good audience, and kind of see what they're bringing to it. And then kind of lightly, most of my direction, honestly, is do less. That's probably my big,
right.
You can do less.
Can you give me 10% less? Right.
Yeah. I'm always saying do less. And sometimes people, if I do less, then I'm like barely saying it's like, yeah, it'd be great. The camera's like right in your face, don't worry about it,
all right, I'll accept that answer. It's a vague enough. I mean, you didn't name anybody.
No, I think if I had to work with somebody that I really admired, I would probably, I mean, I watched the Scorsese play. There was a documentary, and you saw Scorsese playing Vincent Van Gogh and Kurosawa's Dreams, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I was like, man, that'd be neat. Flying to Japan, get made up, and then get directed by Kurosawa, and then go, all right, you can go home.
Yeah, and also we know that he's always right. He was looking to learn, so that's right.
Yeah, I get to sit and watch that guy work with his crew. It'd be pretty cool.
Okay, for this, you're a thief. There's a vast warehouse of every movie prop that has ever been. What do you steal? Take one thing.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you know what? I would like Jack Nicholson's sailor suit from The Last Detail. The hat and the jacket.
The Last Detail is so good.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. Or you know what? I would also like the jewel that Charles Grodin steals in The Great Muppet Caper. I would like that as well because that was cool.
I think now I would like you mentioned Grodin, which made me think of De Niro, and like I would like the leather jacket.
Leather jacket. You know what else I would like? Now think about it, and it's a weird one. Did you ever see the movie The Black Hole?
You're gonna have to remind me.
It's a I think it's a Disney movie that was it was like 1979, kind of like going off the Star Wars craze. But that movie had really these two robots, and one was they floated and one was smashed up and the other one was not smashed up. And the one that was smashed up had like a really kind of weak voice. And the other one that wasn't smashed up was, had a stronger voice. I would like both those things.
Well, you want both of them. That's right.
I want both of them. I want both of them.
That's a great answer. I got to check that out. Bill, we took up a lot of your time. It's been a thrill. Thank you for all you've done for the Mankiewicz family.
Oh, no, no worries. No worries.
I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
It's pretty obvious I had a great time talking with Bill Hader. I hope you enjoyed it too. As I mentioned, I plan to watch Ken Loach's movie Kess, and now I definitely want to rewatch the Coen brothers Burn After Reading. If you haven't watched Barry on Max, go check it out. It is exemplary cinematic television through and through from episode 1 to episode 32. So that's a wrap on our first season of Talking Pictures. I have loved every minute of it. We're going to go away for a bit, and make some more episodes, but we'll be back with more interviews, more movie memories, and more Super 8 questionnaires. In the meantime, keep watching movies and keep talking pictures. We'll see you soon. You can find many of the movies we talked about on the streaming service Max. We made a list for you. It's in our show notes. James Kim produces and edits Talking Pictures. Dory Stegman books the show. Phil Richards is our sound engineer. Glenn Matullo mixes each episode. Angela Carone is our executive producer. Thanks to those from TCM who support the show in various ways: Yaakov Friedman, Julie Beton, Emma Morris, Katie Daniels, Brandon Arnold, David Byrne, Caroline Wigmore, Diana Bosch, and Charlie Tavish. Special thanks to Michael Gluckstadt, Allison Cohen, and Kenya Reyes from the Max podcast team. Thanks to Millie Christie Dervo and Emily Servadidio from the Max marketing team, Mirhan Tarek from the Max communications team, and to Linda Gao, Marta Duarte Diaz, Tom Hascard, and Kendall Thomas from the Max concept and design team. We love the artwork you created for the show. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.